This is Resonance 104.4 FM. Flippin' marvellous. How you doing? I'm Nick Hennegan. Oh, blimey, sorry. I was a DJ then for a minute. It happens to me occasionally. I used to work for commercial radio years ago. And then actually the BBC. Yes, they had me, the lout, and our Auntie Babe. So every now and again I slip into the stop it. It's literary London anyway. Thank you for your company. I am Nick Hennegan. And we're going to stick with local authors. Of course, with the lockdown, the London Book Fair didn't happen. But one of the events that did happen in West London was the Chiswick Book Festival. Now, you know, we've already been there a couple of times, haven't we? Oh, yes, we have. And there's a great bunch of people. It's arranged by Torrin Douglas, who's a force majeure of West London. And next week, we're going to be talking to Torrin a bit again about him and his background and his kind of history and his love of West London and why he maintains, and in fact, it's not just him, it's some of the national newspapers, Chiswick is the most writerly place, not only in London, but quite possibly the United Kingdom. Part of the reason is because they've already got 2 Nobel Prize winners that used to live in Chiswick. But more about that later. So I went along with my electric handbag because it was in a pub. You know, the temptations of literature. And I recorded most of the evening. And we've already heard from the first gang. The event was actually their, what they call their local author night. And it means that writers who have been published in West London come along and they have 2 minutes to talk about their book before the Horn of Doom, which is a kind of adapted car horn. Honks them off after 2 minutes. It's, I suppose, the equivalent of the shepherd's crook in stand-up comedy. But it was a good night, and so let's go back there. Let's relive the night. The festival's obviously over, but I'll give you details of their website and how you can find out more if you want to know. Let's go west, young man and woman.
So, welcome back, part 2. Who'd have thought we're already halfway through? In fact, we're over halfway through. So, without further ado, the man that's going to lift the microphone because I'm far too short, please welcome Jim Sitch.
That's mission accomplished. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow authors, my name is Jim Sitch and I'm here to talk about my book, Donald Trump and Me. My diary is recording the 4 wild years of an American president. 5 years ago in 2016 we lost David Bowie, George Michael and Prince, and there was a vote to see whether we'd stay in Europe or not. And in 2016 I looked on aghast as we watched Donald Trump, a man with no political or military history, and whose main claim to fame was being the American Alan Sugar, run for the 45th President of the United States. After his victory was confirmed, several commentators suggested that he might actually be assassinated within the first 3 or 4 months. And I took it upon myself to put him down in history. I wrote my first diary entry on Friday the 20th of January, the day before the official inauguration, and then carried on writing a daily diary entry, quotes from Donald Trump and other people, for the next 1,462 days, the entire 4 years of Donald Trump's presidential tenure. Now I would ask people who read this book to remember this. Written into these 85,000 words, consider whether any of his actions, words and deeds can be applied to any of his predecessors. It's a big book, and he said most of it in it. The book is packed full of very memorable and sometimes not always flattering quotes from people like George Clooney, Robert De Niro, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Johnny Depp. There are many more. Many of the diary entries are extremely prescient, and none more so than this one. depressing as that. 4 more years.
In the words of Barbara Windsor, get out my pub. So, Jim, lovely, we're just going to have to ask you individually afterwards what those words were.
Or buy the book.
Or buy the book! Wow! But it's a bit of a problem with buying the book, isn't it, Jim?
The book isn't on sale tonight. It's an e-book out next week, and will be out as a paperback in 2 weeks.
And Jim, do you care to tell us why the book isn't on sale tonight?
The book was due to be on sale tonight, but my first batch had a spelling error where Mr. Trump's name was spelt Trump. It couldn't have happened to a finer president. That's my time.
That's definitely, I've given you far too much exposure now. Next up, please, Kate Mikhail.
Good evening. Teach Yourself to Sleep, an ex-insomniac's guide is published by Little Brown. And as the title suggests, I was an insomniac, but I'm not anymore, thankfully. Quality sleep makes you healthier, happier, and live longer. Yet, sleep deprivation is skyrocketing, and many of us are completely disconnected from our sleep-wake cycle. I started delving into the world of sleep about 5 years ago when I was reading a book written by my great-great-uncle who was fascinated by the mind-body loop and how our words and thoughts impact our body, our health, and our behaviour, including our sleep. It inspired me to look at sleep from a very different perspective, in the hope that I could sort out my chronic insomnia. There is no quick fix, I'm sorry to say, but if we can tune into the basic biology and science of sleep and what is going on specifically with our mind, our body, and our sleep-wake pattern, then we can make choices during the day that can transform our sleep at night. The book reveals how biology, day-to-day habits, and suggestion shape our sleep and what we can do to take control. It is packed with eye-opening research, personal experience, and a smattering of history that links medical pioneers from the 1920s with those at the forefront of medicine today. There are interviews with some fascinating experts, including a NASA-like scientist, and doctors who use clinical hypnosis, aka suggestion, to achieve some startling medical results. Readers are given stress busters to stop stress hormones ruining their sleep, habit hijacks to swap bad sleep habits for good ones, sleep scripts to alter mindset and sleep behaviour, with top tips to round up every chapter. In brief, our bedtime routine starts the moment we wake up. Thank you.
Kate, that was magic. That was absolutely on the second. Fantastic. Well done. Extra round of applause for being completely on time. Okay. Next up, we have Lena Shah.
Good evening. I am Lena, the author of Impetus No Cover-Up, a book of poems and prose. I'm a mindfulness coach and yoga instructor as well as a writer, and I use my poems and prose with my students and in workshops. I would like to read for you today a poem entitled Galvanized 2. Tribulations, temptations, troubled tribes, not aware our time is precious. My time, our time, the time is now. Questions as I wend my way. Who on earth am I? Where am I headed? Moving through the forest and alleys, dark mostly, with sharp flashes of bright. The atmosphere heavy and at other times fresh, airy and light. Resisting that familiar tribal tug, jammed in my head, thrusting me back to moments gone. Jerkily, I come out of its temporary trance. Beckoned by the piercing light, I go on. My time is precious. My time is now. Time to galvanise. Thank you. The poems, prose and illustrations in the book are a personal reflection of my life through my lens as a British Asian woman who grew up in Yorkshire. And I hope that the writing in this book not only soothes your soul but helps ignite a spark of fire of transformation, allowing you to discover your own impetus. I would like to finish with a quote from William Blake, who has been a huge inspiration to my writing, and it goes, "No bird soars too high if he soars with his own wings." Thank you. There is no stock of my book today, but it is on sale online via Waterstones. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Brief pause, brief interlude. Lena, thank you. Wonderful. Now, next up we have Mark Alice.
Hello, bonsoir, good evening, guten Abend, Kalispera, Nostar. My name is Mark Palace. I'm here to talk about my language learning children's books. The thing that I love is that expression, they really spoke my language. I love it because it gets to the connection that you have when you speak another language. It doesn't matter about ordering stuff. What I'm really into is that connection you get with another person when you can speak a little bit of language. What's magical about it is you don't need to speak very much in order to have that connection. So what I want to do is have kids have the ability to get really excited about a language. Now, how do you do that? I was in TV, I wrote kids' TV shows, but my inspiration for this book came when I was smuggling cauliflower into my children's mashed potato. 25% is the maximum, no more than 25%, and they can't taste it. So smuggling, how do you smuggle language learning into a story? So that is my secret. Here you have The Fabulous Lost and Found and The Little French Mouse. 50 or 60 different languages it's in currently. In Waterstones you can get French and Spanish, but all the other ones are on the internet. And what I really wanted to do is to give kids a chance to read a story and be a detective and figure out stuff that would make them smile. I don't really care about grammar and vocab, and you can do all that stuff at school. What I want is the kids to be able to say something fun like, "I have lost my hat, j'ai perdu mon chapeau," and say that to somebody who speaks French. You just see the reaction on their face. And that spark of creativity, that spark of connection that you only get when you talk someone's language is what it's about. And that, for me, is what can trigger a lifelong love of language. So yeah, these are the first ones. Sadly, my illustrator got very, very busy with other projects, so I have a new illustrator for my next series, equally wonderful, Lingo Dingo, coming out very soon. But the other ones are also very charming, and they're available in Waterstones and all the other languages online. If there is a language that I haven't done that you need, do tell me. I've just finished Eritrean, so I'm open to all stuff. Thank you very much.
You guys really have been practicing. That again was 2 minutes on the dot. And without notes. Deeply impressive. Deeply impressive. Okay, no pressure then. Next up, Helen Batten.
Hi, I'm Helen. I want to introduce you to this saucy lady, Miss Emily Soldy. Imagine it's 1860. You're 22 years old, the illegitimate daughter of a Clerkenwell bonnet maker. You've married an unimpressive husband in haste, and you already have 2 children. The workhouse is looming. What do? Emily got herself singing lessons. She changed her name to Miss Fitzhenry. She went into that den of vice, the music hall. She became famous for tragic ballads and dressing up as kings and highwaymen, until she finally made her break into opera and became the leading lady of London's craze for Offenbach. So far so good, but not exceptional. What makes Emily different? She then became a producer and director and then an impresario, setting up her own production company and taking the lease of London's theatres, but always putting herself in the main role. She brought Carmen to Britain. She was the Cameron Mackintosh of her time, and her social life was as stellar as her career, mixing with the great and the good as long as they were men. Still not content, Emily decided to conquer Broadway. She toured the world for the next 20 years, backwards and forwards, across America and the oceans. Australia loved her. Then, catastrophe. Gilbert and Sullivan started writing their very British operas. Emily was outdated, aging and overweight. They called her the very incarnation of vice, and unutterably sad and ghastly. So, she reinvented herself as a journalist, and for the next 11 years wrote a weekly column about whatever she liked: Churchill, suffragettes, hemlines. Emily had that rare thing for a Victorian working-class woman, a public voice, and she used it fearlessly. In 1896, she published a novel.
And again, if you want to know what Emily did in 1896, you need to find out. Wonderful, Helen, thank you. Okay, next up we have Josie Perry.
So we've just had the Olympics and the Paralympics. What did all of those athletes have in common? They were obviously phenomenally physically fit, but actually they all also were incredibly mentally fit. They all have sports psychologists. They all come to people like me. And what my book does, I Can, The Teenage Athlete's Guide to Mental Fitness, is give exactly those skills to teenagers so that they can do the same thing in their sports, whether it's about building up confidence, having more motivation, handling horrible setbacks. And one of the most common, popular chapters are about emotional control and handling nerves. And we all have to handle nerves. Whether it's having that thing, being blown at us after 2 minutes, or whether it's having to give a presentation at work, or do a big competition, or take our driving test. So I thought tonight I would do one of the techniques in the book with you guys, if you're all up for that. So if you could close your eyes, I would love you to breathe in hot red air through your nose for 4, 3, 2, 1. And breathe out cool blue air through your mouth for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And open your eyes. So that's called colourful breathing. The reason we do it is that when we get sitting around like now, we probably breathe about 12 breaths a minute. When you're anxious, when you're stressed, when you're waiting for that thing to go off, probably up to about 20, 22 breaths a minute. And that really changes your physiology. When you're calm, when you do that breathing, you go down to about 5 or 6. And it makes you feel a lot better. So that's just one of 50 techniques in this book. But if you've got any young athletes in your lives, it can be a really good gift for them. Thank you.
I was really hoping I could get to interrupt the breathing exercise. Oh, me. Taking all my pleasure away. Right, next up, please, is Andrew Maunder.
Thank you. So my book is a biography of Enid Blyton, a children's author, a woman who's received, I guess, quite a mixed press since her death in 1968. She's been seen as a racist, as a bad mother, as a vindictive woman. A recent documentary on Channel 4 presented her as in kind of shocked, hushed tones as someone who had a lesbian relationship, who played nude mixed doubles in a tennis court in Beaconsfield. Whether these things are true or not, and actually she was racist, I think. How far the things like the lesbian relationship are true is a bit of a moot point. I kind of rather hope it is true. If she enjoyed it, that's great. But what the book is about, disappointingly perhaps, is none of these supposedly scandalous things. It's about her career. The career which she started in the 1920s. A young girl from Beckenham, from the suburbs of Beckenham, from a young middle-class family, who didn't go to university, was a nursery school teacher, but somehow managed to turn herself into a publishing phenomenon in the 1930s and 40s. Became, I guess, the best-selling writer in Britain. And she did this in various ways. She wasn't original, but she had a good knack of jumping on whatever was popular, like boarding school stories, for example. And she was also a woman with tremendous work ethic. So she could produce 10,000 words a day on her typewriter. And she did it by, she claimed, by imagining her characters appearing on a kind of cinema screen in front of her, and she would just type furiously what they did in front of her. And she would come out of the trance, and she would have produced a book by that time, by lunchtime. Well, not by lunchtime, but kind of more or less like that. So she had this tremendous career. She was hated by other authors, and the book deals with this. So Alison Utley, who wrote the Little Grey Rabbit stories, said that Blyton's books were fit only for the jumble sale. So she had this jealousy and provoked jealousy from other authors.
Let's bring this down here, Brian.
Okay. Hang on.
Slight change of set. Wait a second. Have you got some notes, or are you just?
Yes, I do.
Right, let's get turn down as well. Sorry, folks. Right.
Thank you very much.
All right, you okay
Thank you.
then?
Yes.
Sure. Ladies and gents, Brian Dobbs.
I've got my walking stick, I've got my surgical boot on, so if I were to take a knee, that would take you, all of you, to get me up again before the end of the evening. My book is called Black and White, and I can say here, Black Lives Matter. But my book is about a world where black lives certainly didn't matter. And I've tried to create it. It's a place and a time where black boxers were abused, beaten, deceived, cheated, etc. And even official British championships were forbidden to them. Only white was right. Now, the other thing about this time is one thing that really did matter was boxing. Boxing was more popular than football. It was more glamorous. It was astonishingly prestigious, more than a first night at the opera or at the West End Theatre. And the coverage was phenomenal. I'll just give you one example. The Times in 1921, for one fight, gave it more coverage than the Times in 1966 gave to the 1966 English football win. To the same fight, the New York Times devoted its front page. It then devoted the next 12 news pages wholly to the fight, with over 70 different stories about every aspect of it. So I'm not
Right, minor rearrangement again. Well, I don't need to look at my clipboard because, well, I do actually, because I'm just going to make sure. Yes, I am absolutely right. We only have one speaker left. Oh. How did that happen already? ladies and gents, will you please welcome Louise Burfitt-Dons.
The Secret War is the third in my Karen Anderson thriller series. The background, we know that China is growing in power and determined to challenge the US supremacy. And the US is equally determined to frustrate her ambitions. So the secret war is already well underway between the intelligence agencies of these two great superpowers. Anyway, my story. When Karen's on-again, off-again boyfriend's uncle dies, and he's clearing his house, he comes across compelling evidence that his uncle was working for Chinese intelligence and planned to meet his Beijing counterpart on a transatlantic crossing later in the year. So the couple decide to go on the same cruise themselves to get to the bottom of what is a serious biological threat and at the same time resolve their somewhat ambiguous love affair. And for the first 48 hours, all goes smoothly as they search the boat for the elusive Chinese agent. And then Helen Rogers, a fantasist and fortune hunter, randomly allocated a seat at their dinner table on the first night, is found dead in her bath in her cabin. And she will be one of the first on the crossing as Karen and Haruto realise exactly the enormity of what is planned for New York City. And as the body count mounts, she is faced with the challenge of her lifetime. I wrote this book during lockdown. I love writing it and getting engaged once again in Karen's rather tumultuous, somewhat messy life, and I hope you do so too. Thank you.
What can I say? That's it, officially. However, a few things of note, please. First of all, because no one ever does this, I would like to thank Festival Director Torrin Douglas. Without Torrin, none of this would happen. And he's relentless in his emails, that's all I'm going to say. But he just never gives up, and the success and the brilliance of this festival is down to him. So thank you, Tom. That's point number one. Point number two, authors, speakers tonight, don't forget to come here, please, for your photo. Roger will sort that out now. Point number three, books are for sale at Waterstones. And authors, whether they want to or not, will be signing them. So we've got some tables set up at the back. It's very informal. Just go up, say hello to the person that you want to get a book from, and get it signed. And the only other thing, well, two more things for me to say. One is, if you haven't bought tickets to the festival yet, why not? Go and buy them, please. It's a magic lineup. There's something for everybody, and it's just such a good, fun festival. This has been the best local author night we've ever done. And I hope all of you, despite the horn of doom threatening you, I hope you've enjoyed it as much as we've enjoyed having you here. This bar is now closed, but obviously the pub is open. So the evening does not have to end here. Please carry on, enjoy yourselves. Do buy books, do get them signed, and we'll see you all at the festival over the next few days. Thank you.
Authors? Do they mean me? No, I think not. So the Chiswick Book Festival, www.chiswickbookfestival.net is the website if you want to know any more about it, depending on when you're listening to this, of course. I think I'm going to find the bar. This is Resonance 104.4 FM.